Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel and my series on going through Hodgkin's lymphoma. I'm glad you're here. If you have not seen any of the other videos, you might check those out as well. This is the third in the series that I'm doing to kind of record the background and the history and the ongoing saga of my issues dealing with lymphoma. Anyway, thank you for being here. Before I go any farther, just want to make sure you know that if you want to keep up with this, I will keep posting these whenever there's something new to post. Every week or maybe a week or so will go by, but I'll continue to post. If you want to keep up with it and find out where I'm at and find out how things are going, just click the bell, subscribe and click the bell on YouTube, and you'll be notified whenever I post a new one. For those of you who haven't been on this before and are just seeing this one for the first time, back just prior to Thanksgiving, I was diagnosed with classical Hodgkin's lymphoma. And when I had a PET scan, it was staged at stage 4. So it's a rather serious diagnosis. Fortunately, the lymphoma is considered to be a very treatable and in some cases maybe even a curable cancer. So it's not like pancreatic cancer or some of those, or maybe small cell lung cancer, which can be virtually terminal when they first discover it. Mine is not that way, and fortunately I've got a good shot at full remission of this, and that's what I'm planning on. Okay, I had my first chemo treatment yesterday. But before I get to that, I'm going to give you a little bit of information on how I came about getting there, what I had to go through in the last couple of weeks. First, I had to have an echocardiogram done of my head, of my brain. They did find one. Actually, they did it for the purpose of making sure that I had no cancer in my brain. And the good news is I did not, so that's great. I'm glad that my brain was clear of that. So they don't have to adjust treatment and make it even more aggressive than it already is. The next thing I had to do was I had to have a port installed. And some of you may not know what a port is. A port, it's short for portacath. Traditionally, and in the past primarily, whenever you had chemo, they would give you an IV in your arm, and the drugs would go into that IV and just drip from the little pole next to you. For several hours. They stopped doing that, or some places have stopped doing that, primarily because 2 of the drugs that they give me are very, very toxic. If those drugs should drip out a leak from the catheter in my arm, or even if they should leak inside where they get into the tissue, because the blood vessel they're going into is not necessarily very large. But if that medication got into the tissue, it would burn very bad and could be a very dangerous burn for me, internally as well as on the outside of my skin. So this lab uses, or this cancer center uses a portacath only. And portacath is, I'll show it to you so you can see what it looks like. It's not pretty right now. It's still kind of red, but that's the incision where they cut in. But this is the port right here. And it's covered over by skin. And the port, they ran it up my neck and then over into my jugular vein. So there's no chance of this drug, or these 2 drugs that burn so bad, getting into my tissue or into my skin at all. They do take special precautions. There's a nurse, rather than having this drug drip down and drip into the port, a nurse actually pushes it in. But what they do is they punch a hole in it, or they have a catheter, a small catheter with connections at each end, and they put one into the port, and then the other end they screw in the leads for the bottles that hang up from the pole, or that the nurse uses, and that's how the chemo gets into my body. It comes in here in the cath, up the tube, and down right directly into my bloodstream. The first 2 drugs that I get, the ones that are the most dangerous, a nurse actually sits there and she pushes it in. She has a very large, looks like a giant hypodermic filled with the drug, and she just sits there for about 15 minutes and very slowly pushes it in just to make sure that it's mixed properly with saline, so there's not a heavy dose hitting my system at the same time, and also making sure there's no leakage anywhere, because of the burns that it gives me. So I had to have that port done. Port was done on Monday, just 2 days ago, on the 29th, and it was not traumatic at all. I was in kind of a twilight drug. I call it loopy juice. It kind of makes you feel like you can still hear sort of what's going on, but you can't feel anything, and you're not really aware of what's going on around you. Worked pretty good for me. I probably said some pretty dumb things while I was under that, but I hope not. But it was not a bad experience. So I went in for my first chemo yesterday. First, I had to have my blood drawn. They do lab work every time I go in. And one of the advantages of the port, too, is that they can draw blood through the port. So no more sticking me in the arm every time I go in, which is a big deal. It's helpful because veins start to get a little sore and worn out when they punch them every week or two. So they'll use my port from now on to draw blood and to get the blood samples. And then we went to see the doctor and we talked to our physician assistant this time. The doctor was doing something else at the time, and he sent his physician assistant in and just kind of caught up on that. She got caught up on where we were, what was going on, and that kind of stuff. So then it was into the chemo lab. Now, chemo lab here, they're different. I've seen many pictures of different what they call an infusion center. I've seen many pictures of many different ones, and they're just all types. More private areas, they have individual like cubby holes for people to sit in, and maybe a chair in there for a loved one to sit with you and spend the time with you. Mine happened to be one large giant room with a couple of walls, half walls, dividing it into 4 parts. And there were a total of 29 chairs in there, and I was absolutely amazed when I walked in and saw just about every one of them filled. 25 people at one time getting their chemo, and there were people coming and going throughout. So I was only there about maybe 3 hours or 4 hours at the most, and I had no idea how many times they turned over chairs in there, but it was a pretty busy place. It's amazing how much is going on in those places. I was just overwhelmed. I'm going to try to get some pictures of the whole setup. A little later, I'll show you a picture that I have of the nurse pushing that drug into me. So anyway, I sat down. They got me all set up in the chair, and started bringing the bags out, and they went through the whole process, telling me what was going to happen. And then they started giving me the drugs. They gave me what they call a pre-med first. Pre-meds included things like a steroid, a drug to control nausea for a day or two. Some Tylenol was in it, just a little bit of that. And it was about a 15-minute drip. You just couldn't feel anything, couldn't tell anything was going in. I felt nothing at all. And then they started with the drugs, with the chemo. The first 2 they put into me were the ones that the nurse had to install. So, and this is a picture of me sitting there with a nurse that was actually pushing that red drug, they call it the red devil, that red drug that was the first one, pushing that into my vein. About 15 minutes for that one, and then another one to follow for another 15 minutes. Another interesting note about this is that every nurse in there, every person working in there was at least a registered nurse. There were no CNAs, there were no LPNs, there were no interns. They were all registered nurses. Every one of them was licensed, and they were all specially trained in oncology, because that's what their field they're working in. So they were a well-trained group of people. I was really impressed by that and feel real good about the place I'm going. The rest of it was pretty uneventful. The rest of the day, Donna came in and left. She would come in for a little while and sit with me and just talk, and then she'd leave. They did not want people to come in and stay, or guests to come in and stay for any length of time. because it would get kind of crowded in there. It gets kind of noisy with everybody talking at the same time because everything is wide open. They thought it would be a good idea to let people come and go occasionally. So Donna came in, and matter of fact, she was the one that took that picture of me with the nurse and getting the drug. She was in there for a little while, and then she left, and she had other things she wanted to do, so she went out and took care of that. She'll be going with me just for just about every one of these. She wants to, and I'm happy for her to go. I have to tell you, if you ever have to go through with this, you want somebody like her who will take care of you as well as she's taking care of me. She's spoiling me like I've never been spoiled before, and I'm very uncomfortable with it, so I'm gonna have to get used to it, I guess. She's really been great about it. We were there for a total of about 3 hours, I guess, 3.5 hours, something like that, getting all the drugs, and we were finished. They pulled the tube out of the connection, pulled it out of the port, put a little Band-Aid over it in case it leaked a tiny bit, and then I was on my way. They did. Oh, before I left though, they did do something for me. They attached to me. Let me show you what it is. You see it beeping green there. It's Neulasta. You've probably seen advertisements on TV about it, and I never understood what it was until they attached it to me. They will put a new one on there every time I go in, every 2 weeks. And what it does, what happens when you have chemo, is that the cancer cells are fast dividing cells. And so the chemo drugs are designed to go after and kill and destroy the fast dividing cells. Well, the problem is that there are other fast dividing cells in your body that are good. You want to keep them. The cells in the follicles of your hair and the mucous membranes in your mouth, and your stomach, your gut, your colon. All of those are the fast dividing cells, and those are killed off. The chemo drugs kill them as well as they kill the cancer cells, and that's the reason, of course, that you lose your hair with chemo. That's the reason why you might get mouth sores with chemo. Same reason you might have diarrhea or even constipation. One or the other. Sometimes people have one, sometimes they have others. People have the other. But that's the reason, is because those cancer cells or those good cells have been killed. Well, the Neulasta boosts the blood, or the blood producing part of your bones, the marrow, where the cells are actually created and are spread out through the body. And in the bone marrow, that's the job is to produce white blood cells as well as red blood cells and platelets. But this Neulasta is designed to boost that process and make it go a lot faster, create a lot more white blood cells than would normally happen. And they put this on my arm. It's set to go off in 27 hours from the time they put it on. So, hey, pretty soon here it'll probably go off. If you hear something beeping, then you'll know the drug is starting to go into my arm. But it sits on my arm for 27 hours, and then for 45 minutes after that beep, it will begin to push the medicine into my body. And then for about 15 minutes after that, it will just sit there and quietly do nothing, and then it beeps 5 times and goes off, and then I take it off and throw it away. The reason it waits that long is that when you first get the chemo drug, most of the work done as far as killing cancer cells, most of the work is done in the first day. It's a good portion of it is anyway. It's done in the first day. And so the cells that have been killed off, and now you're putting in something to boost the production of white blood cells and push them into the body as quickly as you can. So that's why it waits. That's why the waiting time is set up. If you ever have to go through this, and they ever have to give you the Neulasta, which, as I understand now, just about everybody does that. I hope you have great insurance. I hope you have wonderful insurance and wonderful secondary insurance, because believe it or not, that little thing on my arm at retail, of course, insurance doesn't pay this, but at retail is $8,506 each. That's the average retail price. I looked it up and it scared me. And I'm thinking, oh my God, if I didn't have insurance, what would I do? What would anybody do? Even if you had to pay the 20% that maybe your insurance doesn't pay, you're still looking at over $3,000 a month, because I have a new one of these put on every time I go in for chemo. Every 2 weeks, I have a new one added. So cancer is an expensive disease to have, extremely. And I just hope that you have good insurance and good secondary, and if you don't, that's something you need to work toward, because even if you're young and you think this is just old people's disease, most of the people that get my form of lymphoma, the majority of them are between the ages of 15 and 35. So if you're in that age group, then you're more likely to get it than somebody who's 74 like I am. So just a cautious word to the wise to think about it, and try to put yourself in a position where you can have insurance to cover the cost of this in case you should ever have it. I'm scared to think of what would happen to people if they didn't have the insurance. Okay, that's about it. I'm going to I'll be taking a little short bit of a video probably every day for the next 2 weeks. One thing I wanted to do is give you a little insight, a little feel for what it's like each day. I don't have any symptoms yet, except a little bit of a metal taste in my mouth. But there are no symptoms, major symptoms. I'm not having any diarrhea, constipation. I'm not fatigue. Fatigue is one of the worst. The fatigue is just saps all your energy and you can do nothing. Nausea and that sort of thing is all very common. I don't have any of that yet, and they told me it would be about day 3, maybe late in day 3 into day 4 and day 5 when it's the worst. So right now I'm doing good, but when I'm going through the other stages, I will be, if I've got the energy to lift my arms up, I will be taking a little short videos just to kind of give you a sense of how I feel, how I'm reacting to the drug, how the drugs are working on me, because you remember these are all poisons they're putting in your body. So they're going to act differently for each person, but just to give you an idea of what it's like for me. So I'm going to be doing that, and I'll put them all together. I'll just thread them all together into one video once this is all done, or before I go back in for my next treatment. So that'll give you a good idea of what it's like for the 2-week cycle. So I'll be doing that, so you can look for it probably in a couple of weeks. Other than that, that's about it for today. Feel free to subscribe and click on the bell to get future updates if you would like to have them. Feel free to pass the link or the information to anyone else that you know that may know me. I've got a lot of friends out here in my business, as well as personal friends that I've met over the years, all the years in the Army and traveling around. So feel free to just pass it on to anyone you think might know me and might have an interest in knowing what's going on with me, just so they can keep up with it. That's the reason I'm doing it, so I can keep my friends and family aware of what's happening, and also hopefully educate somebody else, especially the older people who may come down with this disease, and give them a chance to hear a little bit about how it's impacting one person and how that one person is dealing with it. And so that's the reason I'm doing it, so feel free to pass it on. That's it. Thank you so much for watching today, and I will see you in a couple of weeks, I guess. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.